News. On the air since 1951. This is The Legend. 105.3, 95.3, WDXE.
Hey, that's us, The Legend, WDXE. And speaking of legends, at least to me, Miss Sheila Frisbie. Hey, how are you?
Good morning. I'm
Well,
great.
thank you for being here. And you agreed to come. And I had Steve not too long ago, as you remember. But Miss Sheila Frisbie, if you don't know, of course, Sheila has been a professional here in Lawrenceburg for many, many, many years in the legal field, especially when it comes to real estate. And you own the Title and Escrow Company, Title and Escrow of Lawrence County. So a business person, and you have helped me tremendously over the years, along with a lot of other of us who have had real estate transactions anyway. Been doing that a long time.
Long time. It'll be 25 years next month.
25 years. Well, we're going to talk about your professional life maybe toward the end of the show. But I want to,
Okay.
but I've known you, I guess, I was trying to think, I guess my earliest memory of you may remember this, my earliest memory of you was in Loretta when I worked for David Atian at his little print shop that he had down there on downtown Loretta. I think I remember you coming in and out there, and you might have worked for Herb White or something at that point. Y'all had a Loretta office.
We did. We opened that
And I
office.
think we did some printing for you
Yes.
guys because we were printing way back then. I think I remember you from way back then. Are you a Loretta native?
I am.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about
Okay.
your family and your early life. You grew up where?
I grew up in Loretta.
Okay,
Right on the highway.
right in the main drag.
Right
huh?
in the main drag.
So who was mom and dad?
My mother was Virginia Meyer Hinkle, and my father his name was Cornelius, but he was known as Neil Hinkle. He was the owner of the dry cleaners there in Loretta.
So you were a Hinkle.
I was a Hinkle.
You know, if somebody had asked me that, I don't know if I would be able to tell them. I wasn't sure what your maiden name was, to be honest. I might have thought about it a little bit because there was a lot of Hinkles
There were.
in Loretta. But your mother's maiden name, now who was she?
She was a Meyer.
She was a Meyer.
Meyer.
Okay. Now, were they native Lawrence Countyans for the most part?
Most part, Lawrence County. My mother was raised in St. Joseph, Tennessee.
St. Joseph. Okay. Well, what was early life like for you in Loretta? I mean, your earliest memories, what was it like?
Well, earliest memories was spending time in the dry cleaners, piddling around with my dad.
Yeah.
But we did have a small little mini farm at the house, and we tended to cows, chickens, pigs,
Okay.
whatever the farm life might have brought
So
us.
you're a farm girl.
A real farm girl.
Well, how about that? And I don't know. I don't remember where was the dry cleaners?
Right downtown Loretta. It's right across from where the print shop was that you were talking about.
So the old Main Street Loretta. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Loretta was a different town then.
It was.
What was it like?
It was small, but very quaint, and everybody knew you. And when you walked the streets, you just enjoyed life. It was very relaxing.
Catholic community.
Grew up Catholic.
Yeah.
And yes, German Catholic.
German Catholic. That's
Homestead.
the Hinkles. I had some dealings, and you remember this probably with Hubert Hinkle. Now, how was Hubert?
He was not related to
He was
us.
not
That was
related.
a different set of Hinkles.
Different set of Hinkles. Now, how does that happen?
It just does.
How does that happen?
Probably way back, you
Yeah.
could get us together.
I have the same thing. You know, people ask me if I was related to the Hoods that were here, like Orrin Hood and J. Robert Hood, and not that I know of, but I've heard stories that family and my family, which my father and mother grew up in, my father in Giles County. But I understand they came from the same area of Alabama when they settled up in this area, the family. So the tree forked way back there somewhere, I guess. Same thing with the Hinkles, I guess.
I guess.
Probably so. You know, they your dad, of course, he ran the dry cleaners, you said?
He did.
What was your dad like?
He was very humble. He did not want to be recognized for anything. He
Yeah.
was mayor for a short period of time.
Oh, really?
His brother had the dry cleaners with him, and when permanent press came out, there wasn't enough dry cleaning business, so wasn't enough to support two families. So my father took on working for the city, actually running the garbage truck
Really?
as a job.
How about that?
Later, as his brother retired from the dry cleaning business and he bought him out, he did take the dry cleaning business in its entirety, but he did run for mayor one time and was elected. So
How about that?
only for one time, just for one term.
Just for one
he
term.
had enough of that.
Had enough of that, huh? So you growing up, elementary school was, I guess, at the
Sacred Heart.
Sacred Heart. Loretta High School.
Loretta High School.
Graduated. What year did you graduate? I'm going to age you a little bit. What?
1974. So
74.
we're fixing to experience a 50-year class reunion next year.
Oh yeah. All right. Have you been to your class reunions much?
Yes.
You know,
Enjoy 'em.
I've been. I think I went to one, and I've missed the last one. I wish I hadn't.
I missed our 40th.
So that's one I missed. So anyway, I'm gonna try to make another one if we have another.
If you have another
If we have another one, I'll try to make it. But anyway, what I was going to ask you about, you graduated high school, but going through school, were you a good student?
I was.
I would assume that you were.
I was in our top 10.
A lot of
but it
girls
was
are good at school anyway, but I would have assumed, knowing what I know about you now, that you probably studied hard.
I studied hard, but I also worked as a waitress at the Branding Iron my senior year. That
Well, I was going to
quite of
ask
an
if you had some
experience,
the
yes.
Branding Iron.
The
Where was
Branding,
the Branding
Iron restaurant, right next to the funeral home there in Loretta. I worked for $1 an hour.
$1 an hour. The Branding Iron. See, I may have. This is your senior year.
This was my senior year.
I may have
73,
a vague
74.
memory of the Branding Iron being there.
Great steaks. Doyle Williams cooked great steaks there and
Okay.
catfish.
How about that?
We hosted lots of parties that people would have parties in the basement, so we waited on large groups as well and
Yeah.
had a great lunch, so people came there for lunch.
Seems like I remember there being a restaurant there where the new Burger King is now, right across from the old from the post office. Was there?
There was a small.
There was a little
yeah,
small restaurant there at one
there.
place.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the name of it, what it was, but the Branding Iron would have been across the road,
That was the main restaurant.
right in there. Okay.
Yes.
So you were waitressing there during your senior year?
Yes.
So you had to work and school.
Work in school.
Oh, you poor girl.
I know. I made more in tips than I did in salary.
Well, that's generally the case, I think, for the waitress. But hey, you got spending money.
I did.
And did you going to school, going through high school? Did you have intentions to go to college?
Well, I started out because as growing up, you know, in that era of time, you might not have enough. The family might not have enough to actually send you to college.
Yeah.
So I was had mixed emotions. So I started out working with Ronald Blue with New York Life Insurance. Spanky Green was very helped you at high school to get you placed in a job.
Okay.
So I started out in the insurance field. I was not meant to be in the insurance field of selling life insurance. So then Herb White decided that he wanted to open an office in Loretta, the law office.
Right.
And was looking for someone in the Loretta area that would know all of the Loretta people. So he reached out, Spanky again reached out to me to ask me if I'd be interested in that job, and I accepted that position. And we opened our Loretta office on August the 1st, 1974. So right out of high school, I started working with Herb in that little small office right downtown Loretta.
Wow.
So that's how I got started.
So you started in the law office right out of high school?
Right out of high school.
Well, you know what? I don't know that I knew that. That's interesting.
On just a wing and a prayer.
A wing and a prayer. That's the way we started, was a wing and a prayer. Absolutely. You know, a lot of things get started that way. Well, knowing what I know about you, because I've known you a long time actually, but not knowing all of this kind of background, I knew that you worked for Herb's office, but I had no idea you started right out of high school. So that's pretty cool, actually.
It was. I was mainly Herb was coming down and taking client appointments.
Yeah.
It was later that we took on doing more real estate work.
Yeah. So what was the law practice for him, and I guess for you with the Loretta office? What kind of issues may have come up?
Well, our main at that time it was Bank of Loretta was down there,
Yeah.
so that was part of his, and the other bank, Bank of America, I think it was. So that was part of his deal. Coming to Loretta was that they would give him some of the bank work from there.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of individuals. Dickie Brown from Loretta bought and sold a lot of real estate, and we took on all of his work. So
Yeah.
it was learning then at that point, preparing warranty deeds and starting to do some title searches and that kind of thing. So I stayed in the Loretta office for about 6 years till Herb realized he wanted me in the Lawrenceburg office and
Oh, wow.
moved me to Lawrenceburg to start working then.
Well, good deal. Well, but you became a young adult.
I did.
You
Grew
know,
up real fast.
Grew up fast and took on responsibilities in a law office. So how did things unfold for Sheila in family life?
Well, I got married very early, and at age 19,
Yeah.
when I knew everything, So that first marriage was only for 9 years, and later met Steve Frisbie, and he had three wonderful children. So took that on. In 1986, we got married, and it's
1986, and the rest, as they say,
the rest is history. Yes, yes.
Well, I was looking, and it keeps popping off. It keeps going away for me, but I had it up here, and because I looked up, I mentioned Steve earlier. Of course, Steve was here with me a few weeks ago, and we enjoyed visiting with him. And of course, he has Frisbie's Apothecary. But let's see, married to Sheila, 3 daughters, 10 grandchildren, and 6 great grandchildren. But is there any more since then?
There's 7.
There's 7 now.
Mm-hmm.
7 now. So you guys have a busy life. A lot of coming and going. Now you've, of course, I know you live here in Lawrenceburg. You got a beautiful place. But do you have big family gatherings still?
We do. We just had our annual pumpkin painting
Oh, really?
Sunday. That's a tradition. I have traditions with the grandchildren.
Oh, well, tell me about that.
Well, in the fall, we do our pumpkin painting, and we've been doing that for probably 25 plus years.
Really?
Their talent comes out, and as early as 2, they start painting a little pumpkin.
Oh, okay.
And it's quite unique what they come up with. And then at Christmas, we put together a Christmas play.
Oh, really?
The parents don't know what we're going to do. So
you do this with
we keep it a secret, and it might be what you would call a little redneck, but we put it together, and
That's good.
They love it. They still love it. Our first play started with the nativity scene, and we kind of acted that out because I wanted the children to know that they could give a gift of love.
Right.
So that gift of love is showing that they have talent to their parents.
Oh, that's
So they all like to spend the night with me the night before Christmas Eve, and we rehearse, and then we put the play on Christmas Eve.
good. Yeah. How old are the grandchildren?
Oh, they vary from 39 to
So-
to
Sheila, you're not that old.
to the grandchildren to Clara fixing to be 8. So
Oh, wow.
there's a variety there.
Wow. Okay. And so the grandchildren participate in the plays.
Yes.
Well, can we buy tickets to these plays?
Well, you're welcome to come watch them. So we reenacted the nativity scene on the 25th year, And it was a little spooky because it's a different generation of children, but with the same costumes.
Isn't that something?
So
Oh, wow.
That was interesting.
I bet. That's great.
And somewhere the children have those all videoed. So.
Well, neat. Those are great memories.
Those are great memories.
And of course, we're headed toward the holidays. I guess you're already beginning to work and plan on that now.
Absolutely.
Good deal.
And then at Easter, we do our annual Easter egg toss and race, and we play with the eggs and.
All right. Well, good deal.
Yeah.
You got Steve learning to skip still.
He's practicing.
He's
still.
practicing. All right. Well, hey, I wanted to kind of double back to your days with Herb White, because that launched your professional career, really.
Really did.
But you probably had no idea what was going to happen when you went to work.
I did not. When I came to the Lawrenceburg office, I started searching titles at that point.
Yeah.
And that was interesting because you went down to the registrar's office. Geneva Frisbie, now was my mother-in-law, worked there as well, and she ran for Register of Deeds, so she was always down there to assist me if needing any help. But the wonderful Mary Bassham, who was from Loretta, that worked for Chuck Dorflinger, was, she was always wonderful to help you.
Yeah.
But a lot of people did not realize how we searched and the importance of a search, and you spent hours and hours putting that search together.
Yeah.
So learning that was a trait that had to be taught to you. And at that point, I thought, I think I'd like to go to law school.
Oh,
so
really?
I'd been going to Columbia State, and I had this huge idea. Took some classes from Judge Jerry Scott, some business law, real estate law, and then I was thinking, I think I'm in over my head. So kind of backed off of that, and at that point, Herb had developed cancer, so those last 3 or 4 years of his life, I spent a lot, just the time in the office, and dropped out of my college classes.
Yeah. Well, you were, of course, you and I have talked, and that was, in 1986 was when I got my real estate license. That was about, if you remember, Steve Williams started Homefront Realty.
He did.
And I was able to join that office and begin to try to make a living a little bit in the real estate business, and knew nothing. And so there were you and people like you who helped me tremendously and kept us out of trouble. Kept us out of trouble as best you could, that kind of thing. So when you say you had some help and some training, I kind of understand. I was thinking about what a great, if you think about our little neck of the woods here, Lawrence County, and the people here that would take someone like me or you under their wing, and help them get to know what they need to know. And you mentioned a couple of names there. Of course, your mother-in-law, and then who did you say was
Mary Bassham?
Mary Bassham
was from Loretta, but she had searched titles, and it was quite interesting. All of her research notes was done in shorthand.
Oh, really?
So it's kind of sad to say that there sits all those notes, and probably no one can read them now. But
did you take shorthand in high school?
I did not.
Well, that didn't help you.
So
then,
it didn't help me any. So I had to let her just talk to me one-on-one if I needed help. But
now, did she work for Chuck Dorflinger?
She did.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And if you ever have an opportunity to go down to the Register of Deeds office, Ms. Tara Dickey, Register of Deeds, would be happy to show you the direct and reverse indexes and how they work, and how you can look up any, if you want to get your family heritage or the past, or
there are records.
There are records. There's lots of old records.
Yeah, there are records, and I remember my first exposure to all that, and I was like, I was just overwhelmed with it, really. But there were people there to help. But I remember finding out about deed books and page numbers and where you had to go to look up, to find the deed or all that kind of stuff. Yes. But I quickly learned that it was better if someone did it for me.
Let the professionals handle it.
I quickly learned it was better if someone else did that.
Well, my slogan, Jeff, is put the most experienced closing team on your side.
Yeah.
So when you surround yourself with good people, that's the old saying. It makes you look better.
That's right. That's right. So you, with Herb, and of course, he was, I guess, your mentor in
He
a lot
was
of this.
very much a mentor. He would not only just tell you how it needed to be done, but why it needed to be done that way.
Yeah.
And understanding the why was the real importance of my learning. And unfortunately, he passed away in 1986 with cancer.
Yeah.
But he had a vision and a dream. And his dream, he wanted to be a General Sessions judge at some point. But he also could see the vision of having a title, an escrow. So we talked about that. And, like I said, during the 3 or 4 years that he battled his cancer, this was his dream.
Yeah.
And after his passing, I stayed at the law firm with Alan Betts.
Right.
Until I opened my own company in 1998.
Right. Well, let's talk about that just a little bit. How did you determine to do that? In a little bit about how that took place, or how would you go about doing such a thing?
Well, I had some real estate agents that was from the Memphis area that kept saying, this is what's happening in Memphis. More and more people they had approved non-attorneys to write title insurance.
Yeah.
So that was a big change in the 97, 98 year that a non-attorney could be a licensed title insurance agent. So that was step one. And then I had First American, who was reaching out to me to say, we would like for you to do this.
Okay.
So
Now, First American is a title insurance company.
insurance underwriter that I write for.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
there are different insurance underwriters. So between them reaching out and me, Sarah being our youngest daughter, going off to college, and me thinking if I open a business, I've got to put 100% into this, and I needed that time. So with being empty nesters now, that gave me what I felt like was the time to devote to opening a business. Because as you know, you're married to that business, so you got to be there. You're the face of that business, and you're there.
Right.
So I just took the plunge and decided to go out on my own, and that was on November 1 of 98.
98. Okay. So we've leapfrogged a little bit.
We've leapfrogged.
Yeah,
we have.
Sure have. We jumped into business, and a good business. But you didn't go in green. You already had experience with title work, title searches, real estate closings, all that kind of stuff. It'd been a part of your life for a while.
For 25 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So right out of high school, really.
Right out of high school.
You started it. It's pretty amazing, actually, to think about that. And what do you think? Of course, I'm in the real estate business, and you, of course, obviously in a different position are in the real estate business. That's what you handle.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you handle. So, what do you think people in general may not know about title insurance? Because when you mentioned that earlier, title insurance is a different thing than a title search or a title opinion. And of course, having been exposed to it a while, I kind of understand this, but I still find myself having to explain this to a client or something like that. So you have your hands on it every day. Now, you mentioned earlier that the laws had changed where a non-attorney could write title insurance. So how did that take place, or do you have some knowledge about that?
Well, in order to write title insurance, first you have to perform the search.
Yes.
So, you want to make sure that you do a good due diligence of searching the title.
So this is a matter of trust between what would have at that time been the attorneys and the title insurance companies.
That is correct.
So the title insurance companies would say, we want an attorney to do a search and say that this title's good, and then we'll write insurance on it.
And they write the insurance on it.
Okay.
But that insurance underwriter is looking back at that that person who does the search is liable for that. If
Right.
you make a mistake, that insurance underwriter is going to come back on the person who did the search.
Okay.
They might pay the claim, but they're going to come back to you, the searcher.
Yeah.
So
okay.
you want to make sure first that you have somebody who knows what they're doing when they do a good search, because
Okay.
you're liable for that. So that's the liability side of it. But title insurance, getting back to your question, is we refer to it as peace of mind.
Yeah.
It's your peace of mind when you buy a piece of property that no one's going to take that property away from you. So the number one claim is undisclosed heirs.
Yeah.
So that is your peace of mind that, like I said, no one's going to take that property away from you that's going to come back and make a claim on that. About the only thing it does not insure is pretty much survey matters, unless you get an ALTA survey done to remove those. But fraud, forgery, misindexed documents at the courthouse, there's so many things it covers that. So, if you're going to invest $200,000 in buying a house, what's $500 to get an owner's policy for your protection? It's a one-time premium. So
Yeah, it's one of those things. Insurance is one of those things that you kind of, it kind of makes you cringe to pay for. I'm talking about any insurance.
Any
insurance. But you don't want to be without it necessarily either.
that's correct.
Because if you need it, you need. I'll give you an example. We just bought a new. I mentioned earlier the furniture move deal. Well, this has caused us to need a new rug.
Of course.
Okay, we had to have a new rug. So they actually have an insurance that you can buy on this rug.
Seriously.
Yes, in case you spill something on it and make a terrible stain, blah, 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 whatever, you can buy insurance for that. And I was like, are you kidding? And of course, some rugs are fairly expensive, blah, blah, blah. And you may consider doing that if you tear it or mess it up. So anyway, I've got off on that.
Well, when you think about it.
But it's one of those things you're like, I don't really want to do that, but what if?
Well, when
And
you
so
think
you
about
got the
it.
what ifs.
Yeah. It's a warranty.
Yeah.
Anything you buy, you're offered a warranty. When you buy a piece of property, you get a warranty deed typically, and
Right.
that warrants title to you.
Right.
And
Right.
The seller is saying that they're going to defend that.
Yes.
But if somebody comes back and makes a claim, I've got to sue you, Mr. Seller, because of the issue. Where if you have title insurance, you can go back to your insurance underwriter for the claim.
Yeah, but some
So-
certain things have to take place before you have title insurance. Though.
That is correct.
You don't get title insurance.
Just don't say I want this $500 premium. Like I said,
There's lots of things that have to take place before you get title insurance.
That's correct.
So anyway, that's and we may get into all that. I don't know. That's a good thing. You started title and escrow.
Okay.
And I remember did you start title and escrow in the building that you're in now?
No, I
didn't
was
think so.
down, rented from Bobby Marcus right behind the courthouse in that little white building behind the courthouse.
Okay.
Started out there.
Of course, the office now is on North Military. A lot
That
of
is
people have
correct.
mentioned it.
So
but-
we built that building in '99 and moved in the year 2000.
But you were behind the courthouse to start with.
That is
there
correct.
From in a Bob Marcus's building or
Yes.
close to it. Was his insurance office still there at that time?
No.
No. But he had that building.
He had that building.
Yeah. Okay, I remember that.
We
now.
rented pretty much most of that building.
Okay. How many staff members do you have to start with? Just you?
Four. There was four. Melinda came with me to open the office, and Melinda Huntley.
Yeah.
I couldn't be without her.
I was going
my-
to say, did she start right with you off the bat?
She started with me right off the bat.
Right off
yes.
the bat.
And she searches the titles, and she knows what she's doing.
She does.
And
Melinda
I would
is-
put her up against anybody in the whole state of Tennessee on searching a title.
She makes me crazy.
Does she? Why?
I say that in a loving way.
Okay. With all of her colors?
Because she's so fast.
Well,
And if you try to follow her anywhere, you're going to have to run.
you do. Yes.
You're going to have to run.
That's her pace in the office.
She
too.
is like she darts around like a bee.
She She can get the job done,
She
Jeff.
can
Let's
get it
just
done.
say that.
I say that she knows I love her like a sister, but she
She will jump over boxes to answer a telephone.
she will. She will. She's something else. And so you've got an energetic right-hand man right there.
Absolutely.
Or right-hand lady, I should say.
Right-hand lady.
And so you had that right off the bat. And she's very thorough.
Very thorough. And so from there, we just kept adding people and kept growing. And just, I've got as many as 13 employees. And it takes all 13 of us. Some days we're chasing our tails, as they say. We don't really know, I don't know how I could get by without all of them. It takes a team.
Yeah.
A professional team.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they all do a great job. It's a great testimony to you and your training and influence on a lot of folks that have come through your office.
That's correct. And I have worked very many of my grandchildren.
Have you?
And I'm elated to say that Ben Wright, as he worked for me, kind of fell in love with it. And I looked at him one day and I said, would you consider going to law school? As you know, since I'm not an attorney, I've worked very closely with Paul Plant throughout the years.
Right.
Ben decided to go to law school, so he went to Sanford and graduated and passed his bar in February. So we're elated to say that we've got
that's a recent happening there.
Yes.
So Ben now is a licensed attorney?
He is, and practicing out of my office.
That's pretty awesome. That's a proud moment.
That's a proud moment. That's a proud grandmother moment, too.
That's a proud moment. Well, he's of course, he's learned a lot, I'm sure, in your office, and will learn even more. It's a practice, isn't it?
It is a practice. He's got to absorb what's in my head.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that. Good luck with that. So you're at the Marcus building, then you had to build a new building.
Build a new building. We outgrew that, so.
And you built a big building.
I built a big building.
Tell me about that. Because I remember, anytime you go into construction, this is like, that's a full plate.
That was quite a challenge. When I bought that lot, Mark McKissick and Bob Counts owned that lot. Mm-hmm. And it was pre-approved to have a building down that ditch line, but then the flood project took care of that, and I had to get off the ditch and build the ground up, and there I sit right there in the middle of the lot. So Mark McKissick built the building, did an outstanding job.
I remember all that. Yeah, I remember all that. That's a good deal. Well, you've got a great office and a welcoming office, and we've done, a lot of business there. Haven't had the opportunity to do that. And over the years, Sheila, I must say, when I've needed help, you've been eager to help. Maybe you weren't eager, but you didn't let me know it.
Well, it is a service, and if we can take the time to help people to get where with what they're looking for or they need, we just, that's just how I grew up, all the way from the days of working in those cornfields to whatever. That's just how my daddy raised me. You try to help others.
Well, it's a lot of hard work. You work hard, a lot of hours.
A lot of hours.
I know. Mm-hmm. But what about free time and recreation? What do you do for enjoyment?
Well, free time and recreation is a lot of it is if watching the grandchildren, and every one of them are involved in sports of different kinds. So, that's a lot of fun following them around. And then we have a lake house, so the relaxing time is to go down there.
My question is, when do you get to go? When do you
get? Well, you just have to find the time. Sometimes you have to just stop and go do it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, part of the love of my life is riding around in the sports car with my husband on just these quaint little roads throughout Lawrence County or Giles County.
I enjoy that. Sometimes I'll leave the office, even in the middle of the week or the middle of the day, and just get in my truck and go take a ride.
It's beautiful.
And I can think and I can sing. if I need to sing a little bit. But no, you mentioned your sports car. What kind of sports car?
Well, Steve has a Porsche. He's had Porsches all of his life, and so after his deal with COVID, he looked at me. He always wanted to build his own dream car, and
Yeah.
He said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Go for it. You've worked hard all your life. Build it, design it,
What do you
ordered
do?
it."
What do you do?
He ordered it. He
Yeah.
put it all together how he wanted it. And,
Yeah.
you know, he's always wanted a turbo, so there we sit with the 911 turbo.
Oh, wow.
And I love it.
So you get to go riding with
Yes.
Steve. That's great.
Yes.
Well, you know, you mentioned COVID. Of course, it affected everybody all over here and there and everywhere. And of course, Steve had a serious bout with it. I remember.
Yes.
You want to talk about that, Edie? Tell us a little
It's-
bit how that. I mean, I know it was a difficult deal
It was difficult.
because you kept working and had to work,
I had
and
to-
he was battling
well-
it a real serious deal with this.
You know, with the COVID, you weren't allowed in the hospital.
Yeah.
So all I could do was drop him off.
Yeah.
I made it as far as to the emergency room, and from there they took them. And this was in the period of time when, and we went to Murray Regional, that, you know, I hate to say it, but they had a trailer truck in the back that they
I know.
were, you know, some that didn't make it, that's where they ended up. So
Yeah.
14 days in the hospital and zero communication hardly. So it was tough, you know, and he had his business. We weren't expecting this. So now I'm trying to help with two businesses.
Yeah.
So I guess that might say that occupied my time since you couldn't be with them.
Yeah.
But we learned to, and he was so weak that he couldn't talk on the phone. So, you know,
Yeah.
you're just all of a sudden having that separation and that anxiety, and then you're starting to think, this could be real. You know,
Oh,
this
it was
you know,
very real.
It was very real.
Yeah.
And he coded on day 4, and he knew what was happening to him, and you know, it was real for him when he came home, and so that's why I say you just have some life-changing moments.
I was going to say that's a life-changing
It's a
event.
life-changing event. And fortunately, he's recovered from most of it. Still has some issues with it, but we just take
Yeah.
those, you know, as they come.
Yeah, I've got to see him. Of
But,
course, he was here, and I've got to see him a few times
Mm-hmm.
since his battle with COVID. And yeah, he told me he said he still has issues
Mm-hmm.
here and there, but
But I did take on a lot of his helping with the payroll and stuff like that at the drugstore to make sure those girls, and they did an outstanding job of
Yeah.
maintaining the drugstore while he was gone. And he's just lucky I didn't put him on QuickBooks while he was. He still does everything manually.
Oh,
the
really?
old way. Absolutely.
really
Old school.
old school. Well,
Old school.
he's an old dude.
He is.
He's an old dude and a great guy. Always been just super friendly with me. Of course, that's where we do our most of our medicines is there.
Well, thank you.
We do that, and I try not to get too many, but because you just don't want to take medicine if you don't have to.
That's
but,
correct.
But I have a few that I have to, evidently, that kind of thing. But anyway, well, let's go back to Title and Escrow.
Okay.
Title and Escrow now is a thriving thing. Now you not only serve Lawrence County, but you work outside the county as well.
We do a tremendous amount in Giles County, but
Yeah.
we surround ourselves with Lincoln, Marshall, Wayne, Lewis, do a few in Perry County, some in Murray.
Yeah, there's lots of times I have called you and you're elsewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we take on a pretty big area.
Yeah.
And so I have 3 full-time searchers, and then 3 closing agents and 3 processors and 2 front desk receptionists, and then we have Ben there as an attorney. So we're wide open. And then a post-closer. Not only is part of, it's kind of a vicious circle, you might say. When the contract comes in, we start picking that apart and taking it from there. Then we do the search, then we process it, get it to the lender or whatever there, and then we go to the closing side of it.
What would you think, to the average person who decides they want to buy or sell, what would be some advice? This could be looked at as a self-serving spot for me because I'm a real estate broker and I have a real estate company and of course we want people to use us and use our services, and so I'm not wanting to make this a commercial for what we do, but for the average person who there comes a time and a place in their lives when they need to buy a property or sell property, or they have an estate or whatever that they're dealing with. What would you think would be kind of the first line of thinking that they should be doing? I mean, where should they go if you got someone who's kind of doesn't know what to do?
Well, if they don't know what to do, if they're working with the real estate agent, they're going to have a contract.
Yes.
And even when they sign that contract, they still don't even really know what to do. But I guess it depends on if they're working with the lender. The lender's going to kind of take charge and order the work from there. But they still don't even really have a clue what's going on.
Right.
But if they're not working with the lender and they're paying cash, I would never advise anyone to buy a piece of property without at least getting a title search done on the property.
And a contract.
And, well, hopefully they're working with a real estate agent, but if they don't, they need to put together somewhat of a contract to make it a binding deal.
Yeah, I would think, even if they're not using a realtor, or if you've got two individuals who are buying and selling with each other or whatever, I have always thought they probably still need some kind of an agreement like you're talking about, but it don't always happen, does it?
It doesn't. That's correct. A lot of times it does not happen, and if the deal falls through, you have nothing to go back on. So
right. I think just finding someone to work with who has some experience that can guide you through the process is I guess a selfish way for me to say you need to use a realtor, but
well, they should.
But because not everybody, for most of us and most folks, they don't do real estate transactions every day, or it's something that they do very rarely. Well,
a lot of times, and I'll give you one example. Maybe they might be reaching out to buy this particular home, and they're working with just one of the heirs.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, this one heir agrees to sell the property. Well, when it comes to a title search, we may be working with a whole estate, and that one person doesn't have the authority to be doing what they're doing. So, if they would work with an agent, it would be more likely that you all would pull your information and find out.
Yeah, there's so much
to
find out, and I think I learned that slowly.
To make sure you have the right people on the contract.
To have the right people who have the authority to either buy or sell.
Correct.
The property, and sometimes they just don't know. But they may be, think that, and I've run into this where they think they have something that they don't have. And I'm sure you have too.
That's correct.
And or they think it says things are a certain way and they may not be. And that's the importance of hiring someone who has the experience like yourself to look through the legal documents, because you are dealing with legal issues.
And as a non-attorney, I was very elated to work with Paul, and we talked very much on a daily basis. And now that I have been there, he can look over legal documents. So, I would reach out and say, if you have any questions on anything that you've got coming up and you need any legal assistance, reach out to an attorney if you have any questions before it gets too far that it turns into an issue.
Right.
It's the main thing.
What about if of course, you've been doing this a long time, and this may be a crazy question, I guess, but I was just thinking, can you think of anything that just was so far crazy out of the norm without revealing anything, that you've run across with a deed issue or a thing like that, something that's just bizarre? And I know there's been probably several.
Well, there is several. We've talked about that we could write a book on some of these things.
I'm sure.
But a lot of that story would be where we've done closings and how the different places we've been to go do closings. But as far as something being bizarre, I guess maybe we had a gentleman that moved here from Texas, I think it was one time. And it was back when we were first in our old building, and he was buying some property over in Lewis County. And we felt like that he was some form of, I don't know, we just didn't feel comfortable working with him. And he tied us up all day long with this closing. And it was kind of like a little scary moment,
Yeah.
So it's a day you'll just never forget, because we felt very uncomfortable working with him, and
just didn't know who this guy might be, huh?
And turned out later it was an issue.
Oh,
he was, so
one of the things that I've run across, and you have too, is when you find something in that runs with the land, something like that, restrictions have been put on properties that that stay there.
yes,
And we've run into it here in Lawrenceburg with some beer, alcohol, and gas, things like that. We've looked at that on some properties on the main drag that things were put in a deed that it could not be a certain way, and so those things are frustrating when you find out there's something that needs to be done or could be done, but because of a clause that was done 50, 75, 100 years ago that nobody knew about. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about when you say doing title search and title work. You just don't know what you may find.
that's correct. We what we refer to that is when you do a title search, you're setting up a chain of title. So you're setting up, starting with the current owner and going backwards, and then you're going back and looking at all of those deeds that came out of to see if there were restrictions or mineral rights or leases or anything like that. Then, so there are restrictions that's placed on property, and if it was just omitted from a deed for some reason, it does not mean it doesn't apply anymore, So the deed you could be looking at might not have restrictions in it, but if it shows up in a prior deed, those restrictions still apply.
We run into this not too long ago on a piece of property, and it doesn't matter where it is or whatever, but way back, I'm talking about more than 100 years ago, in somewhere in the description of the property, a cemetery is mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody knows where it is. Nobody knows how to find it. But it's just mentioned. And it's thrown a monkey wrench in the fan, and it has to be addressed, to clean that up or figure out what's happening and all that kind of stuff. So those are the kind of things you got. I'm like, well, so what do you do? And that's why we hire professionals like you to figure this out.
And that's where we address it. If we don't know what to do with our insurance underwriters.
And attorneys. And,
that's correct.
And it can, usually things can be resolved, but it may take time.
That's correct. I write for First American Title Insurance and Chicago Title Insurance.
Yes.
And so the beauty of having two insurance underwriters is that you can get differences of opinions.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're working with lawyers there. And so, we rely on what they tell us.
Can you believe that lawyers actually have different opinions?
Yes, I can.
Can you believe that? Is that a real thing?
That's a real thing.
They have differences of opinions? You got to be kidding.
So,
I'll pick up my lawyer friends a minute.
Yeah.
Better not pick too much, though.
No.
We depend on them.
We depend on them.
We do. We can make jokes, but we depend on them.
They have a wealth of knowledge.
They
that's
do.
For sure.
And it's good to have a good one.
That is true. Not every attorney does real estate work. So,
that reminded me of a story that I've kept in my memory. Doesn't have anything to do with a lawyer, but it has to do with having a good one. A buddy of mine, Mr. Buford Springer. Do you remember Mr. Buford Springer?
I remember him.
Yeah, he was a great friend of mine, and he was just somewhat of a mentor. But he had a little shop building out behind his house there where he kept his tractor and all of his stuff. And I knew if I needed something, I could probably go borrow it from him because he may have it. And so one day I did need to borrow something. I went over there, hey, you got a so-and-so? Yeah, I got one. Come out here. So he stops me at the door of his shop. And he says, you better wait here because I'll have to go through this mess. And I opened it up, and, of course, there's stuff everywhere. And he looked back at me as he stepped in. He said, even a pack rat will leave a path. And I said, well, not a good one. Because you couldn't get through there
at all.
But he knew right where everything was. And I think that's one of the keys of someone with the wealth of knowledge like yourself, especially you're familiar with the circumstances that surround real estate transactions. And so for me, in the profession that I'm in, having you as a resource has been an awesome thing.
Thank you.
Been an awesome thing because you know where things are and you know how to find them. You know where to look, and you know what to look for.
That is definitely.
And you have helped me to know what to look for. So I avoid a lot. We avoid a lot by knowing what questions to ask, and what to look for when we're doing the contracts and we're doing all those things. So you've been a tremendous help and an influence with my business, and I appreciate it. I really, really do.
Well, thank you.
I really do. You know that.
Like I said, the team I have can, we can call on any of them to help. But your title search is like putting a puzzle together.
Yeah.
So it is making sure that the piece of land that you are buying is incorporated into that description.
Yeah.
And lots of times it requires a survey, So it is. It's a.
That was something else. I remember the survey work is always, or it can be a big challenge to get done because they're so busy and have been for the last little while. But you mentioned Herb White. I remember some of my early memories of being in the Herb White office, and he had a table upstairs somewhere and he liked to plot. And if you don't know explain what plotting is.
Well, he taught me that, and I'm very elated to say that I still use that on a daily basis.
Do you?
And I have shared that with a lot of mine. So it's our tax maps are on a 1 inch equals 400 foot scale.
Mm-hmm.
So how he taught you to deplot is to take all those calls that's in that deed, whether it's south 10 degrees, west 48 minutes, whatever feet, and you manually deed plot that. Now we have what we refer to as deed plotters. You type those calls in, and your computer prints that out for you. But to manually do that by hand, using your tools that you've got, the Pronto tools to work with that, to deed plot an old description by hand.
It's like a drafting table.
That is true.
Yeah, it's like a drafting table, and it has the T-square and the degrees
absolutely,
and
all that on it.
And you can hand plot.
And a lot of that's in poles.
Yeah.
And so converting that to feet, but we have a lighted table that we work off of we manually deplot a lot of stuff still. If you get
That's
those old descriptions.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
The old R.G. Chapman surveys.
And if you don't know what we're talking about, if you got the deed to your property, somewhere there should be in the deed to your property a description of your property, and it could be a survey description.
Could be.
Now, if you're living in a subdivision, it may refer to a plot, and refer to a survey. But if you're on a rural piece of land, more than likely there is a survey in that deed.
Get it out and read it.
Get it out and read it. And,
it's interesting.
And the other thing is, I found out that those descriptions, when they're done, ought to close.
Yes.
They've got to come around and touch each other. Otherwise, you got a mistake in your call somewhere. And those are things that are just interesting to me as we learn the land stuff.
As many years ago, way back when, a lot of people I think wrote some of their own descriptions that's just bounded on the north by and south by or whatever, and those don't work anymore.
They don't what?
We can't insure those. You've got to have a survey description. If it's just bounded on the north by John Doe, on the east by...
some of the old descriptions
like that.
You can't get insurance on them anymore.
Can't get insurance on them.
They have so they need new surveys. A lot of properties do, and a lot of the old surveyors, were using such different equipment way back when. Now we've got very high tech equipment that can get very precise about where we can pinpoint a corner.
Exactly.
And it used to not be that way. They pulled the chains, and it was a whole different deal.
Whole different world.
Different world. So anyway,
we've come a long way.
Sheila Frisbie's been my guest here this morning. We got about a minute left, and of course, if you don't know where Sheila's office is, it's on North Military. What's the address?
816
North Military. But a Loretta native, a little girl in Loretta. Graduated Loretta High School. A waitress for at least a short period of time, and then right out of high school, right into law work. How about that? Pretty good thing. And then, of course, I would say that you would agree with me that you and Steve are blessed with beautiful family and a lot of good folks to work with.
We are.
Yeah.
And we're going to have our 25th year open house on November 15th.
Yeah.
Come by and see us.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, thanks for this thing's not working. I'm looking
This is
there it is right there. There it went. We've got to get up and get out of here and go do our real jobs.
That's true.
Thank you,
That's
Sheila.
true. Thank you so much for
God
having
bless,
me
hon.
today.
See ya.
Are Republicans united this time? I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News. We'll find out in a few hours when the House could vote for